Alright, so we have a basic scene with hex tiles and some turrets that can track the enemies. In this episode, we're going to start working on creating the ability to fire at the enemy. So we have this basic targeting script, and if we wanted to, I could start working on that and add the laser script to it. I think it makes more sense to put the laser firing script in a separate C# file. And the reason for that is, let's say this is the laser, and this is a missile turret, and this is like a slowing turret, and then this represents, then we'll just say this represents our targeting script. If I take our targeting script and add the laser behavior to it, then it's going to be kind of limited. Like this is just going to be a laser. And now if we want to make the missile turret, we're going to have to create some sort of new targeting functionality, and we could create the same targeting functionality, but then it's just like we're duplicating the same code, and that's not necessary. So what we're going to do is create the laser attack, create the missile attack, create a slowing attack, and then just give each of those a reference to the same targeting behavior, because all the targeting behavior should essentially be the same. It's just the attack behaviors that are different. So we're going to start setting that up now. So first I'm going to right click in scripts and create a C# folder, or a C# script, sorry. And I'll just call this laser tower. Alright, and I'm going to click here and hit Control X to delete that line, Control X, and enter for some formatting, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see it better. Alright, so first we're going to create a public float of type a public variable called damage of type float. And so that's just going to be a decimal value damage. And we probably want some sort of game object to represent the attack. So we'll say public game object attack prefab. And so I talked a little bit about what prefabs were before, and so I'm just going to go into that a little bit more now. We're going to create a game object of type particle system. Alright, so that should be in the middle of the scene. I'm just going to drag that over, just going to drag that over to here, and right now I'm just going to hide the floor so we can see this particle system better. Now I'm going to name it laser attack, or just laser prefab, and I'll drop that into our prefabs folder. So I mentioned what these are before, but basically you're just taking a game object with all of its components and settings, and if you drop that into the project view, you're essentially just saving a backup copy of that object, like as it is in your scene, and then you can actually just drop it into the scene a bunch more times, or you can reference it from code to recreate it. So now we're going to work on that prefab, and right now it just kind of shoots particles out randomly. So why don't we make this look like a laser? First I'm going to change the start size to about 0.1. Then I'm going to go to the emission tab, open that up, and change this to 20. Collapse that, open up shape. I'm going to change it to a box and just zero these out. And then I'm going to click on trails. Now you'll notice if I expand this, every single particle is getting its own trail, but all of the trails are lacking a material. So if you go to the renderer tab, there's this trail material property here that pops up when I enable trails. And so I'm going to click on that and just type default and take the default particle. And now that's starting to look much more like a laser. And if we wanted to, we could add some noise to this, and that can make it look like a cool lightning bolt type thing. And That's a lot of fun to play with, and that you can definitely make it look like a cool lightning bolt arcing across the map. But for now, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to disable noise and just keep one straight beam. The last thing I want to do is go into the collision tab. I'm going to enable collisions, and then I'm going to, where it says planes, I'm going to click on that and set it to world. And essentially, that's going to allow it to collide with anything in our scene. And by default, it's going to ricochet around the scene. But you can change this max kill speed value, and what that's going to do is, if it collides with a game object going faster than this speed, it's going to die. And so I'll just set that to 0. So no matter what, if it hits something, it dies. And then while we're at it, I think I'll change the color. Actually, no, I'll leave the color white, and then later if we want to, we can change it to blue or red, depending on the tower shooting. So I think that makes sense. So I set these values. Now you'll notice if we drag the prefab into the scene, it still looks like that. That's because we haven't actually saved our changes. So if we click on the laser prefab here, just click on apply. And now that modified the actual prefab. Now let's drop that into the scene and we should have a laser. Alright, and now the last thing I want to do is change the speed. And that's in this top section. Start speed, set that to like 15. Start lifetime 2. Alright, and apply. So now we have a laser prefab. It's saved in the project, so we don't need it in the scene. Now we need that to be referenced in this script. So we have a variable, but we don't have a reference to the actual object yet. And so anywhere that we have a basic targeting script, we need to, anywhere that we have a laser tower script, we need to assign the attack prefab to that. So I'm going to go up and search I, and that's going to give us all of our towers. Now I'm going to add the laser tower script. Right, so that added it to each of these 6 eyes, and now I'm going to drag the laser prefab onto that slot. So now all of them know what attack to create. Alright, now we can bring the floor back. And we might want to make this darker later, because usually particles look better against a darker background. And that just has to do with the particle materials. Usually particles are additive, meaning they make the scene brighter, not darker. So you can only get so bright in a scene. Now, we have our attack prefab, so let's just create that. And this video is getting kind of long. I think that we're not going to create the attack yet, but we're just going to reference the targeting so that we know when we want to shoot. So first, the targeting script, eventually it's going to find the enemy. Right now we just hard-coded it to a single enemy. Eventually it's going to look through all the enemies and pick the one that it wants to attack. And then if that enemy is within a range, then we want the laser tower to shoot at it. So let's just create a property. Now a property is it's a variable that you can access from other scripts, and every time you access it, it fires a certain behavior. And I know that's not the best definition, but you'll see what it is once we create it. So we're gonna call this bool. A bool is essentially a yes or no answer. It's a boolean. It's true or false. So bool can fire, or I'll say should fire. And we want to make that public. And then we'll say get and set. So if they call get, we can just say return true, And if they say set, we say something equals something. So I know this is probably really confusing if you're not used to scripting, but I'll explain it. So should fire and actually I'm sorry, I'm just going to simplify this. Again, I want it to be as beginner friendly as possible, so we're not going to worry about the property. Instead, we're just going to have a should fire public Boolean value. We're not going to do a property, we're just going to have a single variable here. And now we're going to set that in this piece of code. So if distance is less than range, should fire. And Mono Develop does this nice thing where you can type the first letter of each word and then it guesses what you're trying to say. So I'm just going to type SF space should fire equals true. Otherwise, the enemy is out of range, so we're going to say should fire equals false. Alright, so I think that makes sense. And now in the laser tower, we need to find this script and get this value. And these scripts are both on the same object, but they don't necessarily know about each other. So we have to create a reference. So public, we're going to create a variable of type basic targeting so we can reference this script. Public basic targeting. And so that gives us a reference to the targeting script. And now when we start, we're just going to say basic targeting equals get component basic targeting. And then you have to end it with these. And now what that should do is it should just go through all of the components that are on this same game object. So it's gonna look at transform, it's gonna look at eye, it's gonna look at mesh render, and then it's gonna get down to the bottom and it's gonna see laser transform, and it's going to save it into this variable. And then in update, if basic targeting dot should fire is true, and we don't actually need the is true. If you just type basic targeting dot should fire, it's gonna say if this is true, do this. If it's not true, skip over this section. And we're just going to print should fire. Alright, so now I'm going to hit play. And you can see in the console, I'm going to uncheck maximize on play. And now you should be able to watch this cube go down. And then once he gets in range of one of these towers, it's going to start spitting out the message should fire. Right, so it just popped up, and it's doing that every frame for every tower that's in range. So we're getting a lot of these messages. It's up to like 1,500 now. So it looks like everything's working so far. So I'm going to cut this video off here, and I'll pick up next time with actually making the turrets fire.